We will now have presentations and recognitions. Dr. Woodsworth.
Mr. President, members of the board, first presentation is from state auditors. We would ask that they would come up and present the fiscal year 2013 audit report.
You guys in accordance with the provisions of Act 2006-196, Acts of Alabama, Code of Alabama 1975, Section 1613A 73D, commonly referred to as the School Fiscal Accountability Act, I'm here to present our audit report on the Birmingham City Board of Education, covering the period of October 1, 2012 through September 30th, 2013. The report is available on our website, which is www.examiners.alabama.gov. It was published on September 12, 2014. We conducted our audit in accordance with the generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards for the purpose of rendering an opinion on the financial statements and to determine whether the board complied with applicable laws and regulations. We also conducted an audit of the board's federal financial assistance programs in accordance with the provisions of OMB Circular A-133, audits of state and local governments. We issued an unmodified opinion on the board's financial statements as of for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2013. This means the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. In addition, we issued an unmodified opinion on the board's major federal financial assistance programs, which for the fiscal year were Title I, Special Education Cluster, Improving Teacher Quality State Grants, and the ARA School Improvement Grants. However, we noted instances of noncompliance with state and local laws and regulations and other matters resulting in the findings shown on the schedule of state and local compliance and other findings on page D of our audit report. Findings are numbered and reported by the fiscal year in which the finding originally occurred. Finding 2013-001, the Code of Alabama 1975, Section 3113.9 requires that when a school board awards a contract or grant to a business entity or employer, the school board obtain a notarized affidavit and documentation of enrollment in the E-Verify program. 6 out of 8 bid contracts examined did not have E-Verification documentation. Finding 2013-002, according to the Code of Alabama 1975, Section 3931, a public works contract should contain a provision whereby the materials, supplies, and products manufactured, mined, or processed in the United States. Also, as stated by the Code of 1975, Section 39-1-1A, a performance bond and payment bond are required for a public works contract. Furthermore, in relation to the Code of Alabama 1975, Section 39.1.1F, the contractor shall advise for final completion after all work is completed for a period of 4 successive weeks. The contractor shall provide proof of publication and affidavit from the publisher. In all bids examined for compliance with public works, there were no contract provisions requiring materials be produced in the United States. There were no performance or payment bonds, and there were no notices of completion. Finding 2013-003, financial procedures for local schools, as prescribed by the Alabama State Department of Education, specifies that some expenditures that are not allowable purchases from public funds, but may be allowable expenditures from non-public funds, includes championship rings. At Winona High School, championship rings were purchased using public funds. Public funds totaling $8,419.93 were paid out of the basketball activity. These unallowable purchases were repaid when brought to the attention of the principal. Finding 2002-042, Section 94, Constitution of the Alabama 1901 states that the board cannot lend its credit or grant public money or thing of value to any individual, association, or corporation. Several of the schools are using public funds to finance operation of its non-public activities. The following schools had deficit cash balances in their non-public activities at September 30th, 2013. Bush Hills Academy, $1,806.57. Bush K through 8, $1,969.01. Council Elementary, $114.69. Putnam Middle, $1,157.63. Oliver Elementary, $128.61. Smith Middle School, $3,330.61. We also noted the following matters and have included them as audit findings in our report. These findings were considered to be significant deficiencies in internal control and are presented in Section 2 of the Schedules of Findings and Question Costs on page 58. Finding 2002-014. An adequate system of internal controls requires a proper receiving and depositing of all funds collected. The following matters were noted relating to receiving at the local schools. At Smith Middle School, teacher receipts were not remitted to the school office in a timely manner. Bank deposits were not being made daily. Amounts received in the master receipt book could not be traced into a bank deposit, and several bank deposits could not be traced to a master receipt. At Bush Hills Academy, teacher receipts were not remitted to the office bookkeeper in a timely manner. Therefore, corresponding bank deposits were not made in a timely manner. Some teacher receipt pages were not turned into the bookkeeper for testing. At Hayes K-8, teacher receipts were not remitted to the office bookkeeper in a timely manner. And at Winona High School, teacher receipts were not remitted to the office bookkeeper in a timely manner. Therefore, corresponding bank deposits were not made in a timely manner. Finding 2002-015, an adequate system of internal controls requires the proper requisition and documentation of expenditures. The following matters were noted relating to expenditures at the local schools. At Putnam Middle, some purchase orders were dated after the invoice date and documentation was not available for several disbursements selected for review. At Wilkerson Middle, documentation was not available for disbursement selected for review. At Bush Hills Academy, purchase orders were not always properly completed and or some dated after the invoice. At Hayes K-8, school purchase orders were not always properly completed. At Winona High School, purchase orders were not always properly completed. We have included recommendations to correct the findings presented. The superintendent has prepared a corrective action plan and is included in our audit report as Exhibit 15, beginning on page 60 of our audit report. This concludes our audit report. Thank you very much for your time.
Board members. Ms. Gardner.
Thank you for your report. My question is addressed to Mr. Watts. Mr. Watts, I'd like to know what measures have you taken to address the noted findings in audit?
Letters have been written to the various principals at the various schools, identifying each and every one of those findings, and some will go into personnel files as repeat offenders. Secondly, we have a workshop set up for bookkeepers and principals on October 27th to provide additional training. Also, we are requiring all bookkeepers to attend training in Tuscaloosa to receive a certificate of training for bookkeepers. So we have 2 or 3 things going on at the same time to ensure that these findings are removed.
And non-recurring?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I apologize, Ms. Williams.
Thank you. In response to Ms. Gardner, are we conducting internal audits? Is that a part of our plan?
Yes, we do have internal reviews, yes.
So do we increase the frequency when we have infractions, or are they random, or?
Yes, we do. In fact, our local school accountants, especially at some of those schools where we had those findings, they are out there, they are providing additional training.
Okay, and so refresher training provided as warranted based on those audits?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Alexander.
Thank you. Mr. Watts, I just wanted to ask along the same lines as Mrs. Gardner and Mrs. Williams. This is the second audit report that I have had the opportunity to receive, and it seems as if we have similar occurrences in the last audit with some of the receiving and the timing of those receipts. And I know that you stated that you have training, refresher training. Have you evaluated the effectiveness of that training, and have you done any changes with the training, or is this additional training?
Well, it's probably both. We have made adjustments, but I also want to say that a number of our bookkeepers are new bookkeepers. We've had quite a bit of turnover in our bookkeeping staff, and that's why this training is being continued.
So this will be a continuing, when someone is hired in this position, we'll offer this training initially, as this become part of their orientation or part of their primary training, initial training when they come on, so that we ensure that we have that amount of knowledge beginning at the time they're hired or shortly thereafter.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Brown?
Mr. Watts, when we received the first audit report, I think it was brought up that we had a turnaround at that time of bookkeepers. We were also told that when these bookkeepers came on board, that they were trained. They had some training. In other words, they had some training, but they neglected to do what they were told and decided to do things their way. And this has created a problem for your staff as well as for the board. Am I correct?
Well, I will just say, Ms. Brown, there are some bookkeepers whom we've had some of these situations with that are no longer with us.
Oh, that sounds a little better. But we still have problems.
We still have problems, and we have to continue to provide the training and deal with repeat offenders. We have to deal with those.
Mr. Watson?
My question is for Ms. Atchison. And I guess it's a general question about the findings. Are any of these findings egregious, or are we way out of bounds or out of lines with our handling of our finances? If you can kind of compare to what you found in our bookkeeping, I guess to other organizations, what have you.
So comparing you guys to like another county system,
Sure.
you guys, it's very common. You have very common findings and very common issues. We see them in a lot of systems.
Okay.
Is that, should that anything?
Mr. Collins?
Mr. Wise, I understand this route. We've had some changes at some of the schools, administration, principals, and these problems are not necessarily, they're there, but they're not necessarily, the people that's in place right now are not necessarily responsible for that. So I know at Smith Middle we've had a change, so that problem existed before this administration. Okay.
That is correct.
Ms. Williams?
Mr. Watts, I asked about the internal audits, and I understand changes in personnel. I just want to be sure that the administration is providing the resources necessary to the local schools to avoid these type of infractions. We're all human, that's why we conduct internal audits, and we can coach, redirect, retrain as warranted. I would just look to the administration to help avoid these type of occurrences as much as possible by providing that support to the local schools.
Absolutely.
Any other board members?